Hello, hello. Two people are, yeah. Ming Fu and Seamus. Let's see. Cool. See you in a bit. Did you say something? People can hear me, right? I'm trying a new Bluetooth setup.
Yes.
Okay. Oh, but the audio is not outputting on my headphones. That is confusing. What about now?
I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you.
But y'all are still outputting on my speakers. Why is that?
So I'm doing attendance for this meeting. So if any of you want to just shoot me your grade just for our records, that'd be great.
Right, and here.
What's the words behind? Oh, I see.
Instead of practicing this presentation at all, I made this cool graphic.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's fun. Let's see here.
I I can vaguely hear the math class I'm skipping for this in the background, and it's giving me anxiety.
Hell yeah, anxiety, bro. That's how you live.
I mean, yes.
Big mood.
That's how we all live, yeah.
You should probably pin yourself just so people don't have to do it.
Pin. I didn't know I could do that. Okay. And did the nice lady all tell you guys you're being recorded? when
No,
you entered?
but
No?
I'm cool with it.
Well, I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure I am recording. So,
It's showing up as a recording for me.
okay, cool. If last meeting is any indication of when we should expect people, we should wait until like 2:05 to 2:07. Let's see. Pretty sure. Cool. Bam. And you can see my presentation, right? At least someone.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
By the way, Phoenix, I'm looking it up right now, and it looks like Zoom has a automated attendance feature that we could start using.
Oh, cool. Can you implement that now?
That might be a next time kind of thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let me know what you find out about it.
Cool.
That would be very cool.
Because it looks like not only does it have names and email, it also has like when they joined and when they left, so we can start shaming people.
Ah, yes. That's all I've ever wanted. Can you all see my email that I just pulled up, or is it still on the
It's still
PowerPoint
on the
presentation?
It's on the presentation.
Okay, that's a cool feature.
Yeah, if you choose a certain like window that you want to share, it'll keep that window. But if you like just share a desktop, then you'll see whatever's on that desktop.
Okay, cool.
Did the NuScale getting certified make it onto Nuclear News?
Yes, along with some other NuScale news, which is interesting. Yeah, you'll see. So I have it broken down into 3 sections. I have local news, and the local news is going to be very fun and weird. Not very fun and very weird to talk about. But it's news, so I guess I gotta. And then we're going to go domestic news, which is going to be like NuScale type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to go international, which covers Iran, North Korea, and China. I could have added more in there, but I figured those are just, those are the ones that everyone talks about anyway. Cool. So as I said, even though it is 2 o'clock right now, I'm not going to start for a while.
Can you hear me all right or no?
Yes, I can hear you, Mark.
Yep.
No.
Yeah, I think trying to run the video just like almost killed my internet or killed the video.
Are you in the lab or where are you, Mark?
I'm in the student lounge.
Oh, okay, cool. Is there anyone in there?
There's one other person, but she's on like the other side of the room.
Okay, cool.
Seamus, what year are you again?
I am a sophomore.
Sophomore. Yeah, and just for anybody who came in late, I'm taking attendance. So if you just want to shoot me a message that says your grade, that'd be perfect.
Can someone try the hand raise feature of the thing? Because I've never seen it as a host myself. I want to make sure I can. Okay, cool. Thank you, Eric. If anyone has any like interruptions and stuff, just do to. Oh, look at that, a little party balloon thing. Cool. But yeah, just due to like the lag and stuff, I prefer if you like raise your hand and then I call on you and then you can interrupt me. But feel free to do that at any point throughout this presentation because this is basically meant to be a discussion facilitation. And we can of course discuss a lot at the end rather than in the middle of stuff. But if you do have pressing questions, I would be happy to answer them. Cool. I'm gonna give it like 2 more minutes. Grab some water.
Tim, you're a grad student, right? You're muted, by the way.
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Roca student.
Okay, no one has joined in the past few minutes, so I say let us commence. So thank you very much everyone for attending. I hope everyone is having a good semester so far in whatever dictates a good semester or not, at least going smoothly. And someone's not muted. Sorry, it's kind of okay, cool. Yeah, it lost my train of thought. Okay, well, yeah, so this is my first ever Zoom presentation, so I'm figuring it out, but hopefully we will do a lot more. If you do not know me, my name is Phoenix Baldez. I am a grad student, PhD grad student here at UNM. And one of my favorite things to do through INMM is to do nuclear news, which is basically just tell people the news that has to do with nuclear stuff. And in this presentation, I've broken it down to 3 different sections. This isn't how I always do it, but there just happened to be enough news in each one of these sections to really to warrant this. So we have local news, domestic news, and international news. So local news is weird, and it's weird. I'm gonna leave it at that. We can totally have a discussion on this after. I am going to try and stick to the facts as much as possible. And we can talk about personal beliefs on this kind of thing afterwards. But if you have questions about like the actual news article, feel free to interrupt me. But otherwise, I say we just kind of move on through. But yeah, it is kind of important. So if you have worked at a national lab, you know that you have to take a lot of training. And some of it, if you're in the lab, is just like, hey, don't lick radioactive sources. This is what a REM is, exposure, et cetera, et cetera. Some of it's like, don't harass your coworkers, be a nice person, work as a team. But recently, critical race theory has been a topic. And there, I just have the definition from the Purdue OWL of what critical race theory is. So I'm not going to read it or anything like that, but basically it's puts everything in the perspective, or puts like a lot of human understanding in the perspective of the race of that person. So a guy at Sandia, Casey Peterson, did not agree with the fact that critical race theory should be taught to national lab employees because he said it was political. So he shotgunned out an hour-long video, or maybe he was just an email and then the video was after or something, or the video was attached or something. But he basically hit reply all to every employee at Sandia and railing against critical race theory, and in his email/video called it racist and un-American, and should not be taught. So he got put on leave, but I have recently heard that he is now back working at Sandia. He's an electrical engineer. And Trump then, after this whole kind of debacle started blowing up and getting beyond just the Sandia email servers, Trump then started tweeting about critical race theory, where he said it is a cancer. He also called it racist and un-American and a bunch of other things. Trump signed an executive order a few days after that that said they need to remove critical race theory from government workplaces. So yeah, that is, well, like, I know this isn't nuclear news specifically. It is news that affects the, either some of our current employers or possible future employers. Most likely, if you're going to be working in nuclear, you will be working for or with the United States government at some point. So it's good to know this kind of thing and what's going on. So that's all I have to say about that. Again, if people want to discuss it, we can do that afterwards. So domestic news, possibly a bit better. So the first thing is, so I came across this thing that MIT has this fusion reactor concept that says spark, or that is called spark. And the title of the article that I came across in the New York Times was, I believe I have that later, so I'm not going to go into it, but basically it was saying, oh, this is the fusion that is going to work. And I am a giant skeptic when it comes to fusion. I'm a giant skeptic when it comes to most things, but especially fusion. I think everyone should be. So I just pulled some choice quotes and stuff out of it, but like, yeah, they said that they'll be able to do fusion better than anyone else. I think that's a cool thing to say. A quote from their lead chief operating officer is, "We are really focused on how you can get to fusion power as quickly as possible." I think that's a really funny quote because I mean, of course everyone is like, why I don't know. That's just my personal take, that that's just kind of a weird thing to say, especially when talking about fusion energy and things like that. Throughout the article, they constantly dunk on ITER. If you don't know, ITER is a giant planned fusion reactor in France. It is, and by giant, I'll have some stuff going into that in a bit, but they just dunk on ITER not working or being too expensive and all this stuff all throughout the article. And so the main thing of this comes from, they published a paper, it got accepted into a journal where in theory, they should be getting about 10 times as amount of energy, 10 times the amount of energy they put in, they should be getting out, which, you know, that's how fusion works. Really cool concept if it does work. But the article actually ended with this. So the title of this article stated, "Nuclear fusion very likely to work." That's why the title of this particular slide is what it is. This quote is from the very last paragraph of the article, which I found very funny. "The research confirms that the design we're working on is very likely to work." So this is, the research that they are referring to is a paper that they themselves published. And keep in mind, this is also purely a theory paper. This isn't any actual application of their theory. Said Martin Greenwald, the deputy director for MIT's Plasma Science and Fusion Center, the people who are, you know, working on this thing, and one of the project's lead scientists. Dr. Greenwald is founder of Commonwealth Fusion, but has no current affiliation with the company. So basically, I just included this in here as mostly a palate cleanser from the last topic. But also, you should always read the article, because this is what the first thing that fills your screen when you click on this article. "Compact nuclear fusion reactor is very likely to work, studies suggest." So from the context that I gave in that previous slide, you can see that that is complete bullshit. And a series of research papers renews hope that, you know, about producing energy like the sun. And these are papers that they themselves are published. Yes, they are peer reviewed, but peer reviewed papers on fusion power have come out since 1951 or whatever. Like, so, and also this is pretty fun. This is the first picture that you see. And it's of this giant, really cool looking thing. You have to dig a little bit, but you find out that that actually isn't the fusion reactor that they're talking about in this article. That is actually a picture of ITER. Because the fusion thing that they're talking about hasn't even been built. It's purely conceptual. It's, you know, at a design level right now. So for those of you who like memes, I think something came up in the chat. Are you trying to raise your hand? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to raise your hand, feel free to do that. Cool. So I made a fun meme about it. And this is to scale, by the way. ITER. I'm not gonna explain the meme at all. I'm just gonna let that sit there because, yeah, I'm not going to. But that's actually to scale. There's a little person like right in the side, and I tried to make them the same size. So ITER truly is, again, if you look at this last picture, gigantic. Like that is where the plasma of ITER is going to be. And so it's just a giant thing. Is that gonna work? I don't know. They're not gonna produce power until 2035 or something like that. So we will see. But yeah, that is just kind of funny. So NuScale. NuScale got the final safety evaluation report from the NRC. And thus that finished up the technical review of NuScale's small modular reactor design. It is the first small modular reactor to receive this kind of approval from the NRC. Huge step. I personally believe that SMRs are going to be the only way forward for nuclear reactors because large nuclear reactors just aren't economically feasible. And if they can prove that SMRs are, then they're much smaller and they're modular, so they can be changed out easier and all that stuff. I think that that truly is the future. And so I know little about the bureaucracy that goes behind the NRC, but from the official press release and all that stuff, it seemed very bureaucratic after this. So they finished the technical review. Yes, Tim.
So on the Commonwealth thing, is it just a smaller version of ITER? Otherwise, the same fuel and concept?
Yes, so this picture doesn't because it's so tiny, you can't really see. But yeah, they're both toroidal tokamak fusion devices.
And so, like, for example, stronger magnetic field to reduce size a little or things like that.
Yes, yeah. But then, of course, you have to deal with all the problems of strong magnetic fields where, you're bending and pinching stuff and it's all plasma shooting everywhere. So that's one of the reasons why ITER is so big, is so that they have to, use larger magnets and more plasma and stuff like that. But it's easier to set up those electric fields in nice, more containable ways than in something so small.
Basically, just kind of like pushing boundaries, and worse if don't have better pathways for doing so.
Yes. There are some interesting fusion techniques that I think might even work more than ITER or this Commonwealth.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. And I find it ironic that they're dunking on ITER using the same, I mean, everyone should really be dunking on ITER, but using the same concept, but just that they're improving some aspects of it.
Yeah. I was surprised by how much, when you go through the article, how every single paragraph mentions either the funding of ITER, something about the plasma science of ITER, the time scale that they're working on.
I think for like fiscal year 2020, it was like up to 242 million for like America's share being like 1/11 of it. I mean, and before that in 2018, I think it was like 122 million. So it was more like around the 100 million scale. And then just that year really skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think in the article they said by 2035, when ITER is supposed to go online, it's going to cost as a combined amount somewhere in the range of like $35 billion or something like that. Yeah, like just an astronomical amount. And they originally pitched this. They started working on ITER in 2010 or 9 or something, and they pitched it as like I think a $5 billion device or something.
Well,
so
since like between the last third of fiscal year 2011 and fiscal year 2020, the U.S. contribution was over $1 billion. And if that's 11th, then that would imply like 11 billion total in that time frame.
Dang. Yeah. So yeah, and that's all they've done now basically is, this was we can go and talk about ITER at some other point, but basically what they have is they have the giant hole and they have this giant metal plate. I guess I can use my mouse to point. Yeah. And that's all they have right now. They're obviously about 15 years from even doing anything. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes, but
yeah, it just feels like they went too quick into construction and not enough time on concept. And then also it sounds like this one is just for experiment, and then one that's a little bit bigger would theoretically generate electricity called demo afterward. So it just seems like, so I mean, from a power production standpoint, that either, like if it ends up being 35 billion is pretty much a huge waste if it's like, say 15% in length scale bigger for demo. But I guess also they're still trying to iron out some stuff with demo. So it just sounds like the whole thing is everything on money and speed and nothing on concept and planning. So just kind of throwing as much money as they can, as fast as they can, to try to scrap together if they can.
Yeah. Eric, you have added comment?
Yeah, just a question. ITER, because I saw it earlier and I was explaining to a friend stuff about it. Has there been any proposed power output versus how much they put back in, especially for the electromagnets?
I am sure there is at least like theoretical concept. I don't have that right in front of me, but I would be truly surprised if they hadn't had some of that at concept at least. Tim, maybe you know a little bit about that or anything?
I think it is, well, I mean, so ITER, I think, is supposed to have some kind of power break even or gain, but isn't intended to like deliver electrical energy to a grid. So,
Okay,
but
so
yeah, you could probably look it up pretty easily, like what the power gain is supposed to be for ITER, at least on a thermal level.
Okay,
all
so
right.
I just Googled it, and apparently it's supposed to be exactly like the Commonwealth, which isn't surprising because they're both using the same technology 10 times. So put in 1 watt, get out 10 watts, kind of thing. Cool. All right. So, yeah, NuScale, they got approved. Very bureaucratic though. And so now that it's been officially technically reviewed, it must be certified as a design by the NRC, and that's a whole other step. I'm not really sure all the technical things that go into that, but then once it's certified as a design, then NuScale can use that design as a reference when they start building actual reactors. So they're not certifying the final design of the nuclear reactors. They are certifying a reference material with the NRC so that they can then reference back to that as they are building their actual in-field reactors. So boy, that sounds like a lot, but I'm rooting for them. I hope they do it. Then I saw this other thing where it said 35 towns have been selected for the pilot project of NuScale, and 2 of those towns have actually opted out of it. Logan and Leahy. Both have about 50,000 people, which is why they were chosen, because a NuScale nuclear reactor, like, Palo Verde basically powers most of the entire southwestern grid, electrical grid, where small modular reactors are meant to power individual towns. So 50,000 people, not like Salt Lake City or anything, but those have been the proposed sites. But 2 of them rejected it for being too risky. A guy who previously worked at the NRC is quoted as saying, this action tells you that the future is dark for SMRs. He didn't really go into it very much, but he said that that's not good. NuScale, on the other hand, said that they fully expected towns to withdraw because the towns didn't really nominate themselves either. NuScale and the DOE went in and was just like, your town is good. Do you want this nuclear reactor? And so, the fact that only 2 have gotten rid of them or have opted out is a pretty good rate for, especially for the average American outlook on nuclear energy. Having a nuclear reactor in your town, solely relying on that nuclear reactor for power as well. So actually today was the day that they needed to have the cutoff. So maybe if someone checks the news on this later tonight, you'll see that 1 or 2 more towns have opted out, but very likely there's going to be 30 plus towns in Utah powered, or at least opting in to being the pilot plants for NuScale, which is cool. Let's see, what else do I have? Yes, Tim.
So I think for like a rough order of magnitude reference, you might have like a revenue of $1 per year per watt of electrical power output. So like,
is this for ITER or is this for NuScale?
For power plants.
Oh, okay. Yes, yeah.
Like for say every electrical watt you put onto the grid, like you're constant throughout the year, like have like $1 per year revenue like just order of magnitude scale maybe.
Oh, okay.
For like electrical prices or something. So in that sense, like you might have revenue scaling that way. So for a lower power reactor, I'm just like, I guess asking about the like benefits and drawbacks of like smaller versus large reactors, like megawatt scale versus gigawatt scale, and then say for shielding, like for going between megawatt and gigawatt, maybe the thickness doesn't change that much fractionally.
Yeah, I'm not sure about shielding and all of that. But I know at least like for megawatt to gigawatt is just like, it would really suck if you're a town and you're solely relying on, say, your NuScale nuclear reactor. And then something happens that just an emergency shutdown needs to happen or whatever. And then the entire town is without power and without backup option either. The single point of failure in these things is kind of a bad place to be. And like,
well, Phoenix,
something
remember the point of these is to have like 12 in parallel. So if you have one reactor that needs to shut down, you still have 11 other power plants working for that same area.
I'll be
Right.
100% honest with you. I had no idea I did not know that that's what they were doing. I
Well,
thought it was
it's
just
all-
one nuclear reactor.
It's all about economy of scale. Like one of the big drawbacks for the big reactors is that you put in an investment and then you wait for money to come in after the reactor gets built eventually. With these, you can have like 12 reactors in parallel, where you'll have one that you buy, you get it set up, and it starts making power while you're setting up the next 12. And so unless it's like a plant or like a site-wide emergency, like a natural disaster, then there would be issues of the whole thing shutting down. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure that
Okay. Cool. I did not know that. But cool. I thought they were talking about individual reactors, but reactors aren't my thing.
I'm not sure about the pilot plant specifically, but that's part of what's so attractive about SMRs is the fact that
So
you can get
for the 12 reactors,
what's up?
would the 12 reactors have a capacity greater than they would be allocated for? So like if one or two went down, the other 11 or 10 could produce the capacity that they're slotted for?
No clue, but I know NuScale is pretty open about what their power ratings are. So if you want to go look it up yourself, I'm sure there's lots there.
Okay.
And then also the only image of a NuScale reactor I could find was possibly the worst cropped picture I've ever seen in my life. And I was hoping to have it all nice and skinny there on the side, but they didn't want that. So they're nuclear engineers, not graphic designers. So now let's enter international. So rapid fire. As I said before, we're gonna go North Korea first off. So it's really been a quiet summer for North Korea. Like, considering how poorly 2020 is going, surely we'd expect something. Well, I guess there's been, a couple false reports that Kim Jong-un died. But other than that, not a whole lot is going on, but 2020 ain't over yet. So in early October 10th to be exact, it is the anniversary of the Workers' Party, which is the ruling Communist Party in North Korea. And over the past month, satellite imagery has shown missile launchers and basically a parade starting to converge on Pyongyang. And what a lot of people are looking for during this is, so like basically during these military parades that happen, it's one of the only glimpses we get of high def imagery of North Korea's nuclear weapons, because everything else is basically like either satellite footage, which is nothing, or grainy missile launch footage. So this is really high def stuff, and what people are going to be looking out for here is a solid fuel ICBM. This is not something that North Korea has ever shown before, but it would be a significant step up from their liquid fuel ICBMs. I don't have time to go into all the differences between liquid and solid fuel, but basically solid fuel, much more efficient, much faster, much higher elevations into the atmosphere, and thus much greater risk. They also suggest that they might be showing off a new submarine and then a new nuclear missile that they could put on said submarine. I believe in the end of 2019 or something like that, they actually showed, I believe in a nuclear news that I did, I showed a satellite imagery of submarine pieces being moved through North Korea. So people are saying that possibly here we'll get an announcement of the actual submarine. And you know, even if a submarine is like bad technology compared to the US or Russia's or China's submarines, a submarine is still a submarine, and it's scary as hell in terms of like something you now have to think about with a country with nuclear weapons. Yes, Tim.
Do you know which countries have nuclear submarines currently? I mean, nuclear weapon submarines.
Oh, okay. I think China, France, England, Russia, United States, the big five. But India and Pakistan, I believe India is theorized to have one. I looked this up a while ago, but so I think India has one, but Pakistan does not. But they are actively looking for submarine technology, and I think I read somewhere that Pakistan is like in talks with Russia to get schematics for one of their submarines. But yeah, so I think all the nuclear weapons states have nuclear submarines. But anyone else, you know, and obviously Israel, I don't know. But yeah, so I think that would be a good guess, is India has them, the nuclear weapon states, and then Pakistan maybe possibly, and North Korea maybe possibly.
So the concern with North Korea then just being that a fear of North Korea being less stable and more likely to use them, or?
Yes, that would basically be it, because I guess since the 22 years that India has openly had nuclear weapons against the NPT, you know, against whatever that means, in violation of, but they're not signatories, so they're not violating anything. So, but we've just kind of gotten comfortable with them having nuclear weapons. It's all, yeah, nuclear weapons talk is all kind of weird, because like really no one makes a fuss about India or Pakistan having nuclear weapons. Probably, I mean, no one in the United States makes a fuss, I should say. People in India and Pakistan make a huge fuss about it, because that's the only reason they have them, is because the other one has them. And we are worried that North Korea might get nuclear submarines and use them, is because we are not outright adversarial, but definitely, well, not on good terms. That kind of brings me to the last point here, in which there is the possibility that they are going to reopen talks. This would definitely be something that Trump wants to do, because that would look good for him in October if he meets and signs a deal. However, what's the word? He could sign a deal. Yeah, he could just sign a deal that says, oh, sometime in the next 100 years, North Korea is going to get rid of their nuclear weapons, or just, you know, kind of NPT-like language. Like, we will work to reduce the nuclear weapons stockpiles, like just something kind of like that. Like, that doesn't actually mean anything is going to happen, but he can go and say, look at me, I'm debating Joe Biden and also talking to North Korea. So a lot of people wouldn't be surprised if North Korea really leverages October and the political gains that might be had by a US president during that time. And a South Korean newspaper actually reported that Kim Yo-jun, Kim Jong-un's sister, might actually appear and show up in the United States at some point. Who knows how they know that or how real that is, but that would be very interesting because that'd be the first member of the ruling family of North Korea to ever come to America. So yeah, that'd be interesting stuff to look out for within the next month here about what might happen, especially the military parade and the possibility of reopening talks. So now Iran. So I don't have the time to really go into everything that's happening with Iran, but or like all the history and all that stuff. So I'm going to kind of keep it at a top level. And if people have questions, we can of course answer those later or in the middle. So let's see. The United States left the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, with the Iran deal. And ever since then, they have been creating more low enriched uranium than was previously allowed. You love to hear on news articles that they're like talking about like, oh, Iran's creating so much uranium. There is no sign that they are creating weapons grade uranium. All signs point towards they are definitely exceeding the amounts of low enriched uranium that was allowed by this, but again, America is the one that's left. Iran is still in the JCPOA. That's another thing that I see kind of confused a lot is that Iran, China, Russia, France, and England, I think are all still part of the JCPOA. Just because America is in it doesn't mean that it's not a treaty that's in function. So Iran is violating that because they are still a part of it, and by creating this low enriched uranium. Recently, though, the IAEA has announced that they are trying to still finagle it and hold things together, and keep things from getting truly out of hand. And I believe, yeah, so the recent news is that Iran agreed to let IAEA inspectors visit 2 previously unvisited nuclear sites. These sites were discovered by the intelligence that Israeli special forces stole from an Iranian bunker complex thing. Whoever went to the INMM talk last year, I believe a few of you did, saw I wouldn't say the most interesting talk on it, but we saw a talk on it. It wasn't, detail rich, but apparently the actual things that Israel has released from this special forces mission has never been really detail rich. In nuclear news, or maybe somewhere in the Discord, I advertised a podcast called The Deal. And they've been talking about that. Their last episode was just all about this and how it led to the US leaving the JCPOA. Yes, Mark.
Oh, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, I was just going to ask, have they said what kind of penalties Iran's going to face for violating it?
No penalties, because I can't really think of a good metaphor, but that would be like yes, Tim, I'm going to think on that, but Tim, what do you have to say?
Okay. Well, hasn't US resumed sanctions? So, I mean, if you're going to penalize people, wouldn't you have to penalize US too?
Yes, so the US has implemented sanctions back on them, back on Iran. And that's actually, here, so Mark, I might be able to answer your question, and Tim, your question at the same time with this next slide. So, well, we'll go on to this is about the election. So the foreign minister of Iran has said they don't really care who's in the White House. They just care that the United States behaves itself. And in the past, I'm pretty sure they're talking about Trump leaving the JCPOA. They say it was extremely irresponsible and dangerous to the international community, which, you know, my personal opinion is, yes, that's definitely true. Now, Zarif says that he's still totally down to talk with Biden or Trump even, but that everyone knows that's not going to happen. And the conditions to that are there will be no demands outside of what was originally in the deal. So the 2015 JCPOA is the best we're going to get from them. No chance of getting anything more. And considering the fact that they're already making more low enriched uranium than the deal allows for, I doubt we would even get to the 2015 JCPOA at that. But they also have stated that the only way they will enter renegotiations with the United States if the US compensates them for the damage that the sanctions have done on their country. And I believe this is valued in the multiple billions of dollars. So that puts any US president, we all know Trump's not going to do it, but that puts Joe Biden in a very precarious situation if he wants to look like he is making progress with Iran and stuff like that. The cost of that might literally be billions of dollars. And
so they want money from the start of when sanctions, not when sanctions were reimposed after the US withdrew.
I'm pretty sure they're talking about the sanctions that were reimposed in 2018 when we left it.
Okay, so 2 years worth of?
Yes.
Okay, so not decades worth of.
Yeah, I think this is like, I don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure. But on that, yeah. Anyway, Tim.
So how is Iran doing with the sanctions? Because I get that they should be compensated for what Trump did, but if it amounts to be a lot, then administrations would be reluctant to agree to that. So if you end up with it being a stalemate going on for a certain period of time, like, I guess the question becomes, what happens to Iran in the course of that amount of time with that level of sanctions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Because like, what I could imagine happening is the possibility of maybe a deal working out of saying we will relax sanctions to the amount, like we will give economic incentives to your country to the amount that we owe you. Maybe not like actual repayment in cash, but say, oh, we won't add any more sanctions and we will, like, I don't know, give American companies less tariffs if they trade with Iran or something, to the tune of billions of dollars.
Whatever negotiating compensation options they'd have. And also, I guess, that line from Iran and like the JCPOA, for example, the JCPOA thing is like, with renegotiation, maybe it could be a little better, maybe a little worse. And the statement for Iran on those terms, could be a starting offer. So how things went out would depend on specific negotiations, I guess.
Yes. And yeah, it's going to be, I don't expect there to be any changes with Iran if Trump wins the election. But I think if Biden wins, it's going to be very interesting to see how the Iran situation unfolds. And this kind of brings into context of like, I will go far as to say this: the problem with American elections and American democracy is the fact that things can change so rapidly. Obama signed something in 2015 that only 3 years later, which, in the course of treaties and all that stuff is absolutely no time at all. And it really screwed Iran over because they were expecting, you know, at the very least, for the treaty to be allowed to sunset, because the JCPOA did sunset at some point in time, a decade, you know, 5 to 10 years later. So they probably expecting that and making economic decisions based off of that. So these radical shifts that the US can have really weakens our bargaining power with the rest of the world in terms of this kind of thing.
I guess
I'm
to some
hearing
extent,
pro-monarchy. I'm with it.
benevolent monarchy.
Whatever kind INMM is.
So, yeah, so there's a certain amount of that, like in general. For example, if you switch from, say, all conservative Republican to all liberal Democrat, or some consolidation to some different consolidation, then that would be true regardless. But I guess with the example of the JCPOA, it sounds like Obama wasn't able to get Congress to go along, so that it ended up being like an executive order type of thing. And that makes it easier to reverse for the next president, regardless of Congress.
Yes. But also because the JCP, yeah, like at least the United States portion of the JCPOA, because we always obviously have those other countries who are still a part of it and all of that. But yeah, I believe because the JCPOA was signed but not ratified, or I need to brush up on my treaty law and stuff like that. But signing a treaty is not the same as ratifying a treaty. Because
yeah, I mean, it
sure
sounds like the president
States
was behind it, but Congress didn't consent to it or whatever.
Yes, yeah, because I'm pretty sure the United States has signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, but it is not ratified. I'm not sure about that, but there's some big treaty that is signed but not ratified by the United States.
I know CTBT, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty.
That's the one.
It's been signed, but not ratified.
Yeah. And maybe this was over the summer, so I didn't get to talk about it. But yeah, multiple times Donald Trump has talked about bringing back testing nuclear weapons. So cool. Last section, China. China has always taken the stance of minimum deterrence, meaning that they will have the least number of nuclear weapons they can to deter nuclear attack upon them. But a new Pentagon report states that they seem to be changing either their definition of minimum deterrence or abandoning minimum deterrence, because that Pentagon report states that China is looking to double the size of their current nuclear weapons stockpile, solidifying their nuclear triad. Triad is, you know, planes, trains, and automobiles of nuclear weapons, which is planes, submarines, and ground launched, so silo missiles. And there's been no outward strategic explanation for this. Unlike in America, where we release something, I am forgetting the exact name of it right now, but it's like the nuclear NSR, Nuclear Security Review, or something like that. One was released in 2017, but we give an outward explanation for what we're doing with our nuclear weapons. And China doesn't do that. So we have no idea why they're doing this, but we can make some good guesses. We are spending $50 billion every year for the next decade at least to modernize our nuclear arsenal. That means producing more plutonium pits, redoing the electronics, probably getting more missiles to launch them on. And so the US has stated, okay, so maybe not the US has stated, I don't really know how to put this. Donald Trump and the Trump administration has stated they will not continue with New START unless it ropes in China to include it. Now, New START is the last bilateral agreement, meaning just two parties involved, between the US and Russia. And all the other ones have gone away. basically, if you see those graphs of all the nuclear stockpile numbers go up, and then you start to see them come down, the reason they came down is because of all those bilateral agreements. So there's one of them left. It expires in 2021. Whoever the new president is going to be the person who either signs or does not sign that. And I guess not new president, whoever the president is come January of 2021. Yes, Tim.
So like in certain regards, I guess you could have examples of China, Russia, America, North Korea being aggressive. But outside of that, bilateral agreements or small group agreements would leave out the rest of the nuclear capable states. So, I mean, so you had China, America, Russia, and then I guess China seen as a threat, want to include it. I guess that's okay as long as the other countries aren't a concern, but otherwise you might want to include everyone, or if others become more of a concern, able to include more later.
Yes. And these multi-party, yeah, and that's, so bilateral agreements are way easier than big multinational agreements. I'm going to plug that podcast again called The Deal. They go into great depth about how the negotiating actually works, like how the scientists sat down over the course of, you know, a couple months and nailed out all the bullet points on the deal and agreed to them and discussed them. And doing that just between the United States and Iran was hard enough. And you know, you can argue about NPT and stuff like that, but yeah. Mark.
But I don't think we're concerned about England or France increasing their stockpile, right? So I don't. Why would we? Are we concerned with them, or?
Are we concerned about them? Probably the United States is not concerned about them. Are other countries in the world maybe concerned about that? I do not know.
Yeah,
I don't.
I was just wondering if they're increasing their stockpile at all, because to my knowledge, it's just the U.S., Russia, really, and China.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. You don't hear much about England and France in terms of the whole like arms race, you know, Cold War kind of thing, even though they definitely were a part of it. But the US was definitely, US and Russia were the major parts of it. So that's who you usually hear about. But yeah, I'm not quite sure. Tim?
So yeah, what you mentioned is true about negotiating. So like, that's why you'd want less countries. I guess for like wanting more countries, like if you were say between two countries negotiating your weapons to a very low level, and then makes you incapable of defending against the remaining countries. But I guess as long as you keep enough to hit the entire planet to devastate it, then I suppose it might not matter.
Yeah. That's all I can say is that yes, like theoretically, maximum deterrence is enough to destroy the entire planet. As of right now, the United States and Russia have some crazy number above maximum deterrence. So who knows the reasoning behind that? I mean, actually, there is a lot of reasoning behind that. It's not good reasoning, in my opinion, but so yeah, the U.S. has said they will not sign this treaty until China is included in it, but I've also made no outward motions about trying to get China to sign any agreement. Like there's been no word of negotiating at all in any way. So that's not how you do that. But yeah, basically that is my slideshow. Kind of want to end on a little talk or just a thing about hopefully no one watched the debate last night, and so that means we're all living happy and good and we can forget that elections happen. But basically I just want to bring up an interesting thing that I've always brought this up in election years, no matter who is running or whatnot. But yeah, the president has unilateral authority to launch nuclear weapons. Literally one person, that is it. And think about that when you are voting, and think about the general concept of democracy and what that means when you are giving someone that kind of power. I just think that that is interesting and should be thought about more often, but really isn't. And maybe I've been thinking about giving a talk on the Cold War and the trauma that the Cold War has inflicted upon the United States psyche. Really, I guess the world's psyche, but a lot of the United States, because it's pretty interesting. But
Nuke's scary.
Nuke's scary. Nuke equals ski. Yes, that's it. So yeah, if anyone wants to talk about any other part throughout this, I would love to. It looks like we're filling in right about an hour. I'm down to keep it going though, past an hour. But if you have to leave, peace be upon you. Yes, Mark.
Okay, so I just did some quick research, and so the most recent thing for France is that in 2008, Nicolas Sarkozy announced that they were going to reduce their nuclear weapons stockpile in France.
Oh,
Ooh, sorry, would you say, Mark? They're gonna what? There's stockpile.
Reduce
Reduce. Okay, cool.
a third, I think.
Okay.
cool. That is good. Theoretically, any signatory of the NPT should be constantly working to reduce, or else they are not abiding by the NPT. But, what has the NPT ever done for us?
Sorry, it's the deliverable by aircraft to a third. So they got rid of.
Oh, okay. A third of it is reduced by a third. Cool.
Something like that, yeah. And so they're reducing themselves to 300 nuclear warheads.
Reducing is reducing.
It's almost like the air-launched side of the tripod is the least useful.
Yeah, I think.
I mean, submarines you were talking about at Phoenix, terrifying, horrifying objects, and the fact that a country as unstable as North Korea might have one, very spooky.
Yeah. Submarines are probably the pinnacle of the triad, in my opinion. I'm sure you could hear, if we have anybody from the, have someone from the AFRL talk, I'm sure they would say that, air launched is the way to go or whatever. But in my opinion, the submarines are scary as hell. Yes, Tim. Or Mark, or wait, sorry. I think Mark raised his hand first.
Oh,
if
sorry,
that's
I
not...
left my hand
okay.
raised.
Okay, Tim.
So theoretically, if you had anti-radar stealth, relatively long flight, like even a fraction of a nuclear submarine or a significant fraction, would that potentially be nearly as much a concern as a sub?
Well, so did you hear my talk about hypersonic nuclear missiles? I believe it was the very beginning of last year or something like that.
I think so.
Yeah, so those are probably because submarines can be detected out, before they launch their nuclear weapons. So that's a weakness in them. The problem with hypersonics is that they're coming in so fast and so low that they have no radar signature. They basically look like, upon launch, they don't really look like anything. You can't tell when a hypersonic missile has been launched compared to, anything else. So I would say that when you're dealing with things like hypersonics, and hypersonics don't have any kind of stealth technology, their stealth is just they move really freaking fast.
Fast and low, I guess you were saying low as well.
Yeah. In the a strategic guide to hypersonic missiles that the U.S. released in like the 1960s, these things would fly at altitudes of like 300 feet. And also, they would be flying hypersonic at 300 feet. So they would literally be killing people with the hypersonic blast before they hit their target. So that's...
And then they just have the power to counteract the drag?
Basically they just, they make
the thrust power.
Yeah, they more specifically, they'd probably be something called a ramjet. which is a specific type of jet engine design that only works at high speeds. Ramjets actually have to have a first stage that gets them up to speed, and then they turn on the ramjet, which then allows them to go hypersonic.
And do you know if those would only be launched from ground or other vehicles as well?
That's actually a good question. I more than likely they'd be launched from ground, but if they, I don't know how large these things would be either, or I don't remember how large they would be, but more than likely they could be fit on a bomber of some sort and be launched from the bomber once that bomber reaches its, the speed enough for the ramjet to kick in. But I don't know that for sure.
So, yeah, so with regard to the plane, like the subs and planes would possibly have an advantage of maybe being less unknown on their location at a given time as opposed to stationary bunkers or something. So what I was saying with the plane is if you had maybe some form of nuclear plane or something that could stay in the air longer, and if it had strong stealth, like if that in relatively high altitude would be similar to a sub at relatively low altitude.
Yes. Yeah. I would, in my whatever, little, I guess, comparatively to someone who knows a lot about this, my little understanding is that those would be about equivalent, except for the fact that very good submarines exist right now and nuclear planes don't exist, and stealth technology for planes that good does not exist that I know of.
And would detection be easier in the air than the sea?
I would imagine so. I don't really know much about that, but a jet engine burning is bright and really hard to cover up. Everything else beyond that, I just kind of comes from like science fiction or just kind of fiction in general.
And I guess higher altitude would make a helicopter less difficult. I mean, one reason would be density, but if that doesn't drop off too much, maybe there are other reasons.
I have never heard of anyone talking about putting nuclear weapons on a helicopter or powering a helicopter with a nuke. That would be pretty wild. But people did a lot of wild things back in the 50s and 60s with nuclear energy. So, we might be able to find that. If anyone in here is a nuclear engineering junior or senior, actually, because it's not yet spring semester, maybe you could do a nuclear powered helicopter for your senior design. Just an idea. I think it would.
Well, for reference, you might want to start with like a 747.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as like shielding goes.
Yeah, I mean, they had ideas for a nuclear, but the problem with nuclear is it's heavy. The average reactor weighs like 5 tons, and getting that to fly is hard. And then you have that, the age-old flight problem of to make it fly better, or make it fly farther, make it fly better, you have to put more fuel on it, which then increases the weight, blah, 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 blah. And so you run into that kind of cyclical design flaw.
Right. I mean, I guess like a short Cliff Notes statement would be fission is big and a bit heavy. So that's why I say like starting with a 747 would be better than starting with like say
If you ever get a
used
chance
helicopter.
If you ever get a chance to go to Idaho and to the Idaho National Lab, you can see out on the desert the engines they built for a nuclear powered plane, and they are the size of buildings.
Whoa. I did not know that they actually built those. That's cool.
Yeah, they built them, and then Kennedy saw how big they were and realized how huge the design was actually going to be. He was terrified to cancel the project. And so now they just like sit, rust, and owls live in them.
Okay, cool. I would love to see pictures of that. That's very interesting. Let's see. Yeah,
I guess-
I'm yeah, Mark, continue on.
I have one more question. So you know, there's currently conflict going on between Armenia and Azerbaijan, right?
Yeah, I saw about that
Iran's
today.
backdoor. I don't know if I haven't looked much into it yet, but I was wondering if there's any concern for Iran or Turkey and France have been talking because they both side with the French side with the Armenians and the Turkish side with the Azerbaijani.
Huh. Well, that'd be something to look up, like, because I know a problem, at least when Turkey had that coup or whatever, the fact that they're a NATO country and they had nuclear weapons in the country was a problem. I don't know about anything with either of those countries. I imagine at least one of them would be NATO, maybe. But that would be the thing to look for, is if they're a NATO country or not. Cool, Tim.
So the other thing I was going to mention, you were talking about hypersonic missiles flying low. So I guess that might be low enough for to avoid normal detection, but it seems like you could rig something like to operate on a smaller scale and have like a network of them for detection for hypersonic missiles.
Yes, but the problem is now we're talking about like defense spending, basically. All you have to do is create one missile, and then what the people who are defending against that missile have to do is create an entire network of missile defense warning system, all of that stuff. And well, making a nuclear hypersonic missile or whatever still might be expensive. It's not as expensive as the other country having to do that whole network. So it becomes a non-compete type of thing where.
Well, so one offensive weapon and the yield it would have would be cheaper than a full defense network grid or detection grid. But I mean, but you would still, I mean, if it's a credible threat, theoretically do it if you could afford it. I mean, and it's a flat one-time cost plus maintenance, I guess.
Yeah, true. And and that's the defense for a lot of modern missile defense systems, which I need to do a talk about this at some point in time, because I've always talked about doing a talk about it, but how missile defense doesn't actually work.
Yeah, I mean, if you know about it and don't have time to react, then it's useless. So theoretically, you would want it outside of your nation's borders. If it's in other nations, they theoretically have to be allies or clandestinely done, potentially illegally. And then I guess oceans and stuff, and make sure that they're not bound or whatever, similar to mines and that part.
Yeah, it's a whole thing. I would love to do a talk about missile defense, though, because it's very interesting, because you get down into my favorite branch of mathematics, which is statistics. And because that's really all you can do at that point in time is statistically analyze, what's the word? Interception rates and stuff like that. And it becomes a statistics game. And the statistics aren't good, are not good at all.
Is improvement, I mean, over the last, say, 30 years, has any significant improvement been made on that?
I am sure that there has, but so this was way back, I think it was in 2017. It was one of the first, it was one of the first times Trump ever talked about actually nuclear policy while being president. He said, when he was talking about fire and fury for North Korea or whatever, he went to a meeting or a conference or some kind of something after raining fire and fury or whatever. And he said that, our missiles are 97% accurate, or 97% interception rate. So all you have to do is fire 2 missiles and you're guaranteed to hit it. And that's not how statistics works. That's not how percentages work. And if you dig into the 97% number, you realize that that isn't even a real number, that it's more like, it was something like when in a certain test that the United States once did, there was a 97% interceptance rate. But that was when the missile, the projectile, they launched the projectile, knew all the velocity, directional, all that stuff, and then we sent one to intercept it. In a defense scenario, you would know none of that. All of a sudden you would get a blip on a radar and you'd have about 2 minutes to maybe get that information until you then had to send a missile up to intercept it, or else catastrophe. So it's a bad thing.
And is the accuracy any better for something like a neutron or photon beam?
Oh, I took an entire class about this. I should know that, but I don't. Look up directed energy weapons and you'll see a lot of New Mexico mentioned, because White Sands Missile Base does a lot of directed energy work, specifically in directed energy missile defense. But I think it's that I mean, I imagine it would be better, like, because it's traveling at the speed of light, so you can just sync it up really fast. You don't have to do all these trajectory calculations, and all that stuff. I would imagine it's better, but I know I have forgotten everything that I knew.
And I guess even if you could get the accuracy and range right, then there'd be some concern of things hit in the line of path and for neutrons scattering and going places.
Oh yeah, I mean, also a problem is just general shielding. Like, you just tack on a little bit of extra copper or whatever, something with a really high heat diffusion coefficient or whatever that term is, and it just it makes it laser impermeable, because they're firing you're firing lasers at the distance of kilometers. And yeah, you can get lasers to burn through anything in a lab setting, but in atmosphere, no.
And I guess too, like, if you have just a lot of material, then that's more, or a lot of particles, that's more to go through, and maybe it could do it in enough time, but for what you have, perhaps not.
Yeah. There's just a whole series of factors that make it very, like, nothing is making it easier. There's nothing about this that says like, oh, thank God we got that break. It's all, nope, this, and everything else you can even think of makes it harder. Cool. So I actually probably have to get back to work, but to everyone else, I hope you enjoyed this. I think we'll be having another INMM meeting in 2 weeks, maybe. I don't know, kind of making that up. But Matt, do you have anything to say on that?
Currently, the next planned one is going to be on, I believe, October 14th.
And that is exactly 2 weeks from today. Awesome.
Or maybe 21st. I might have lied to you. Yeah, 1 second.
And that's our good friends at the Sandia Physical Security.
Yep, it is Alan Evans and 2 of his coworkers, each talking about a different aspect of guns, guards, and gates, and they are going to give me the titles of those talks before they give them. So I will have more information soon.
Cool. I'm sad that it won't be in person this year, so we can't do the fun little like, we put on the blinders and then have the giant thick gloves on, and you have to screw in and screw off all the bolts. That was really fun. But yeah, all right.
But I'm sure the talks will be really good, and we might be able to expand a little bit more on what we got from our last year's talk. So cool. I look forward to seeing all of you there.
Cool. And 2 or 3 weeks, you'll hear more information on the listserv or the Discord. I guess pretty sure everyone here has joined the Discord, but if you haven't, Join the Discord. It's cool. We're doing things sometimes. maybe.
Post rat pictures.
Yeah.
And there's a book club. You should plug the book club.
Yeah. If you want to start reading Dune, go start reading Dune.
Okay, yeah, the first one will be on the 21st of October. So not the 14th, but 1 week after.
Oh, wait. So you're talking about 3 separate talks.
Yes, it is 3 separate talks.
Oh, so we can say we put on a series of talks.
Yes.
That's hell yeah.
I can say I organized a series of talks as INMM president.
Right on.
And not I was contacted and asked.
Cool. And actually, this is actually a question I had. Ginger, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, cool. I don't really want to get into it, but did you receive the email from that guy who I mentioned in the first news segment?
Are you talking about the talk that was given today?
Yes, yeah, like the like Casey Peterson given the speaking out about critical race theory. So like
Oh, that email. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking about another meeting that that was given. Yeah, I did receive that.
okay, cool. Just wondering if it like if they were overstating that literally every single person got it, or but
Yeah, no, it got sent out to everybody, and it was also called back. So like no one can access it anymore. Not unless like you like save the link yourself, but it was a video attachment, and then he just like it was a couple actually. It was a couple different links, so for people to access this video.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I think you can find it on YouTube still.
Yeah, it's on YouTube.
Perhaps. I was told that it ended up on Fox News. And I was actually surprised. I didn't know that Sandia let him go back to work. So
Yeah, I think because he has a public Twitter, and I think he posted. Let me confirm that really quick. But yeah, I think he's back at work.
that's a little bizarre to me, but
Yeah, it is interesting. Oh boy, okay, you know what? I am not. Oh, this guy's Twitter is bad. All right, I'm good. I'm done. I'm good. All right.
Oh, you know when you see a toxic, yellow toxic thing on the Twitter that you're not gonna watch all the time.
Yeah, that was a lot just right there in the first couple things. All right, cool. All right, yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, because of all that. But cool. Everyone. Oh wait, Tim, did you raise your hand, or is that from a while ago?
Yeah, so
Phoenix, I do need to actually talk to you pretty quickly here. Sorry, Tim.
Okay. Wait, all right, Tim, real quick. What you got?
So obviously, like racial slavery is systematic racism.
I don't think we should have this talk right now.
I'm good with not having this talk.
I think that one stops there.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I was just going to say
this
that
is nuclear. I don't know, man.
Well, yeah, no, I wasn't going to advocate for systematic racism. I was actually going to say that there are systematic problems, and racism is not necessarily a part of that in itself, but there clearly are systematic problems. But it's again not necessarily race.
Yeah. It's an interesting. Maybe like you know,
maybe
I
when
can't
it's
even
not
think of
INMM sponsored, or
Okay.
when
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not
you were
INMM
just-
a thing.
Okay, yeah, I mean, because you guys had talked about it and said questions after, so yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
But it is 3:20, and I need to get back to work. But I also need to talk to Phoenix. So
Okay, cool. All right, sounds good. Thank you all for attending. This was great.